We wanted to talk about a little bit about your background and how you got motivated to start Be Kind and Company. I think it's a really great project, and the reasons for it are so valid. So I just would love to hear how that kind of got created.
Um, it started out as a blog. Actually, it wasn't an online magazine the way it is now, because we kind of revamped it during COVID. Obviously a lot of us had some time on our hands, so we were able to put some love into that. But it was a really interesting story on how it evolved, because it happened about 4 or 5 years ago, that I had a really unfortunate situation happen where I was trying to be kind to someone, and it backfired on me, and it basically blew my life up emotionally for me. Not a lot of things changed in my life, but it was a big situation where emotionally I dealt with a lot of new emotions around just not understanding why it blew up and why I was punished for trying to be kind and trying to accept the fact that it had happened and what this looks like. And so my first thing I started doing was, it sounds like something that you would do too, is I started writing, right? I started writing about it and journaling about it. And the more I wrote about it, the more I realized that I wanted to either write a book or do some kind of online challenge or something. I knew something needed to be done around kindness, because that was what I was struggling with, is like, I wanted to give up on kindness. I wanted to be like, screw it. I'm just going to be not a cool person anymore, and I'm going to stop helping people. And one night I was lying in the bed and I woke up and I knew what I wanted it to be, when I just thought of Ariana Huffington and the Huffington Post and Thrive Global and what she had done with Thrive Global, where it's all positive and it's about sleep and self-care. And so I called a friend and we slowly started creating. He was in marketing, and we created Be Kind and Co. And it was a blog for a long time. And then it became, I think the more I promoted kindness, then I started doing speaking gigs. So then that kind of got big, right? So it was a blog and I was speaking and all this stuff started coming towards us. And then COVID hit and all the speaking engagements and everything sort of settled down. And so now where we are is that, we do articles. I'm writing again, and not for the articles, but I'm starting to really write forward. I am going to write the book. I don't want to say anymore. I'm thinking I'm going to do it. So that's where we've evolved to at this point. And I love it. And like you said, with your project as well, it's a labor of love. It's a business, but it's definitely something that I think is really important for this world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was raised primarily by my grandmother, and she was a fantastic lady, but she always taught me to lead with compassion and always to put compassion ahead of judgment. So that's something, I mean, in my day-to-day life, something as simple as getting cut off on the LA freeways, right?
Yeah.
My knee-jerk reaction is always to say, oh, that person must be having a really rough day. Like, I wish them well, instead of, getting road rage. And I think because that was instilled in me so young, it's really shaped how I interact with everyone in my life. And it not just benefits other people, but I think for my own like mental health and day-to-day life, it's invaluable.
And I would agree with you. And not only is it valuable for everyone around you and you, it's also valuable for the universe, because I really feel that all the negativity in the world, if there's constant negativity, that vibrates as well. But kindness also vibrates, and empathy and compassion, all that vibrates. So even though a lot of people are like, oh, whatever, kindness, like I don't feel like being kind, or it doesn't really matter. It does matter, because you are making that person in front of you, they're expecting you to be a jerk to them, right? And when you're not, they're like, oh, and it calms them down as well. And then that just begets and gets bigger and bigger. And I think then that can ultimately negate the negative.
Absolutely. I see that all the time. I think, energy, what we put out in the universe is it's contagious, and it affects everything, and your health. It affects your health. I've noticed a lot of people that I know who don't have the same knee-jerk reactions that I do, and they have to really put much more energy into bringing their intensity level down, being kind and not reacting impulsively. they tend to have, some health issues, because holding that kind of stuff in isn't great for your body either. I mean, I think it affects everything.
And to that note, one thing I do like to push with Be Kind and Co. is same thing, and not even being reactionary, but actually taking kindness and using that for self-care and being kind to ourselves, because ultimately I think that does help our health, right? If we're going through stressful times with COVID, or if we're going through it with a relationship or some kind of family issue or whatever it is, something at work, if we can slow down and say, what do I need? Do I need to, in my case, I do, now I can't do sound baths with groups because of COVID, but I'll do meditation, or I'll do positive affirmations from YouTube when I'm putting my makeup on in the morning. And it seems really stupid. Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not the only person who does this. Like, am I crazy? Am I that person? But it really does. It's a practice, and it's a practice to be kind, but it's also a practice to find ways to be kind to yourself. We say so many negative things to ourselves, and we do it for many years. We do it for decades. So it's very difficult to flip that and then all of a sudden be like, I am smart, I am powerful, I am beautiful, I am a good friend, I am a great daughter, or whatever it is, those things. You feel silly. Isn't it weird that you feel silly to say positive things, but you can kick your butt all day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the media and society kind of teaches us to be critical of ourselves and to have a critical eye. And I know, like, for me, for literally decades of my life, I poured. I never thought once to be as kind to myself as I was to my partner or my kids. I mean, between my husband and I, we have 7 kids. It's a lot. And I just, at the end of the day, I was defeated. And I didn't even think how valuable it is to give some of that kindness back to myself and take time for myself, do things that kind of recharge my batteries. But now, I mean, my kids are all out of the house now, and I've been able to invest that time and just showing myself that kindness that you're talking about, whether it's yoga or taking a walk on the beach or doing my, affirmations as well, has made a huge difference in my life. And I ask myself all the time, why did I wait so long to do this? Why did I not make this a priority?
Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? So it's something that either you met someone who influenced you to do it, or you saw an article, or maybe because it's more popular now. But, again, instead of saying, why wasn't I doing it then? Like, sometimes we don't know, I wish they would teach kindness and meditation in school.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's becoming more of a thing now. I mean, I know, like, our grandkids go to more of like a Waldorf school or whatever, but they teach them like meditation and they teach them like de-escalation and things like that, positive affirmations. I think it's fantastic. I think the younger generation, I see that with my kids. They're better at it than I was.
You look like you're 22. How do you have grandkids and kids out of, I mean, seriously, I thought maybe you were like 32 years old. What are you doing?
Oh, absolutely not. No, my oldest child of my own, 27. And
wow, look at you.
I know, this year. And then
clearly you're doing something right.
Thank you. That's nice to hear. Now I am. I wasn't for so long, right? Now I am. Yeah. All those years I thought it was selfish. I thought it was selfish to take that time for myself, or to.
A lot of women feel that way, I think.
Yeah, to invest in myself, whether that was monetarily or just time investment. And then, all of a sudden, the youngest leaves for college and I have all this time on my hands. And one thing I really did want to do is start taking better care of myself for me and do things that kind of like made me feel good. So it's been life-changing. I wish I'd done it 20 years ago, but like you said, just when we know better, we do better, and moving forward. Yeah.
And it's an everyday, it's an everyday. Sometimes I wake up and, to myself, I don't want to be kind and I want to just like hibernate and stay home. But, I like people, and I love animals as well. So, I enjoy interactions with people, and I like to vibrate on a high frequency, and like be around people and be positive. And we can't always be walking around like happy and saying all positive things all the time and being kind, because then that just doesn't seem right. But whatever's in your core, like your grandmother said, I love that, always choose, it was it kindness over
Compassion.
judgment,
Yeah. Compassion.
compassion before judgment, which is, it's great because, and there's another concept that's very similar to the difference between, one of my friends made this very clear to me one time, the difference between nice and kind, right? So if you're nice, there's intention behind nice. Sometimes you feel that you need to be nice because you're at a cocktail party, or you need to be extra nice because it's your boyfriend's mom, or whatever it is, right? So there's intention with the thought of getting something from it or benefiting from it. Kind is when, just like your grandmother says, in terms of being compassion over judgment, you do something not even thinking that anything's going to come from it. You do it from your core and your soul, and from just your heart, and that's what really feels good.
Yeah, I feel like when we practice kindness and we really make it a practice in our everyday life, it becomes like a character trait, and it becomes our automatic reaction to things instead of any of the other choices. But I'm sure you've probably gotten a ton of positive response to this whole movement. And I would love to hear about, some of those. I can imagine how rewarding it is to hear from people that they, this impacts them or they connect to it.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times people think, ultimately, when they think of kindness, sometimes I think they think of it as a weakness, right? If you're kind, you're going to get bulldozed over or taken advantage of, as opposed to looking at it as a strength. And that's one thing I also try to push and talk about, is that it is a strength to be kind, from children all the way at any age, right? Male, female, or children. And it has been nice to hear from people, when I started doing, and this, when you're writing, you don't necessarily get the feedback until people make comments on social media. But when I'm speaking in front of people and I'm able to be vulnerable, I was very vulnerable for my first speech because I admitted a lot of things that had happened to me in my life. I told a lot of cool things that happened to me because I have experienced a lot of amazing things in my life and my career and stuff. But I've also had some really traumatic situations happen to me in my life, and I wasn't prepared to share that. And then one day when I was writing the speech, I was like, this doesn't feel right. And it was because I wasn't speaking my truth. And so when I was like, I can't speak my truth, right? If I speak my truth, then they might not like me. But then I just like, you just have to do it. Like, what's the worst thing? You're going to fall off the stage, or like someone's going to hate you or whatever. And so I spoke my truth and, shared that. And it was painful. But the more I did it, the easier it got. And plus I'm not holding it in anymore. So it's, the more you speak your truth, the softer it gets. But in terms of your question, reaction, where people would come to me after the speech and say, I too have struggled with that, or I too have had that situation happen to me, and they're crying, right? I felt like you were speaking straight to me. That's when I realized that by speaking your truth, and it doesn't have to necessarily be around kindness, that's just what my concept is, and how I've tried to push through some pain. That's where I realize, again, the vibration of the universe. That's where you're helping other people, but I'm also helping myself.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think sometimes we always feel like we're the only ones who go through certain situations, or that people might not understand. And we fear being judged so much that we are not as vulnerable as we should be, because there's connection when you explore that vulnerability, for sure.
Well, I mean, everyone has gone through something, right? And it's not going to be this, we all have had individual journeys, but there's not one person who's walking around who has not experienced pain or trauma or shame or negativity or rejection. And they will be able to relate if they can feel from you that you're being honest and that you're being vulnerable. They can ultimately, hopefully, release some of their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more. I know you did it was an event. That's how I found you, with my dear friend, Heather.
She was fabulous.
Yeah, I love Heather. Our daughters have been best friends since kindergarten, and they currently living in New York together, doing college. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's great to have those long friendships. But tell
For
me
sure.
a little bit about the speaking events that you're doing and these panels, and just I know for sure, I'm sure at least that that's a great way to connect and spread the message.
Yeah. Well, one of my fantasies ultimately, once we get out of this pandemic, is that I want to have like a really big women's forum where we can all come together in one space for a day and have like a kumbaya together and talk about what we're talking about here and have panels, and have moderators talking about different topics, be it work or family or just self-care and things that are happening in our lives. But because of the pandemic, I couldn't do that. So World Kindness Day was coming up this past November, and I decided to do something online. And I had my friend Kelly Lamb, who has, she owns what's called the Whole Purpose. And so we partnered, and I was thinking we'll have like 2 or 3 women. And it just kept growing and growing. We ended up getting Cheryl Teagues and Suzanne Summers and Patty Aubrey. And it was so amazing to bring the women together just for 2 hours on a Saturday morning. It was a lot of work prior to, but once we were all seated in the Zoom call and talking, it felt so natural because even though all the women were from different genres and we were different ages living all over the different parts of the United States, we all could connect because we're all struggling. We all are trying to keep it together and make it look like everything's okay and that we're perfect and that like we got this, we got it all together. But really we struggle with trying to keep it together for the most part, right? And to be able to talk about those things and get advice from each other in a gentle way just is why I do what I do. I really have to trust in that and know that those events will happen and those events will eventually come to fruition. But this last event was called Be Kind on Purpose because I'm Be Kind and Co. and then she's the Whole Purpose. So we did it Be Kind on Purpose. It was our first event. So we're hoping to do more. And I really am looking forward to getting out and doing more speaking engagements for corporations and companies and schools. And a lot of it is going to have to be online for a minute. But eventually, I'd like to get back out there because that's where I feel most alive, is where I'm really connecting with people in person.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, so many times when I see like these forums and panels and places where women are kind of coming together to lift each other up, they tend to be, an industry specific event or like a religious based event, which is fine. Like those have a lot of value for those audiences. But if you fall outside of that, I really don't see very much of that. It's just kind of like for every woman we're all going through the same stuff, and a place where we can kind of find connection and support. That would be amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I'm hoping to try to formulate. We're going to do another event this year at some point, and then it's just the unknown. I don't know what the future holds in terms of like us all getting together again. My first speech was with Berkshire Hathaway and their national convention in Vegas. It was like, Berkshire Hathaway has like 4,000 or 5,000 people fly in and they have all these speakers and, it's Vegas and like, that's not happening right now. Right. So
No.
It's like just different now. It's a different space. So I've sort of, prior to Be Kind and Co. Leading up, and I had mentioned it to you, I, was going to do a book, but I've never really done it, but I've been writing this for 4 years. Right. So I just have papers and thoughts and blogs and stuff all over the place. So I've committed to myself and working with an editor and someone who's sort of helping me formulate it a little bit. I want to put it on paper, not just the speech that I do, but my experiences in life as a female, as a former high school teacher, and then someone who works in television, and then someone who's had some traumatic things happen to me that just flipped me upside down. And when I've had to realize, I'd never dealt with shame ever in my life. Like I didn't even know what that was. And now like to be able to touch that emotion is like super raw, and to be able to empathize with other people who have had to deal with shame. It's really interesting to be able to write about that. It's painful, but it's really interesting to write about it. And so hopefully when I can put the concept of this book together and then be able to go and speak about it with Be Kind and Co. and then have these women forums. That could be, I just feel really good about that space.
Yeah. And I think like you had mentioned speaking in schools, and I think that message would resonate so much with the middle school and teenage girls, especially because that's something that's so needed. It's such a space where unfortunately kindness is a rarity in middle school and high school girl communities. It's I mean, besides all the bullying initiatives that they have now, which are great, but there's just, it's a rough time. I think almost every girl goes through such a rough time, and they feel all kinds of negative feelings, self negative talk. And it can, if it's not addressed, it's not talked about openly, it can really lead to some bad behavior. So I think that is also, a whole spinoff of speaking at schools is such a great thing.
No, I agree. And I was a former high school teacher, so I know that age, that 9th grade, 10th grade age. And it's interesting because they do anti-bullying, but they don't do pro-kindness, right? So you could look at it, and we don't want people to bully, but let's teach them ways to be kind so the bullying doesn't happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And what do you do if you're bullying yourself? That's a thing that happens.
Well,
right?
There it is. Yeah. Well, we are bullying ourselves. I mean, I don't know who taught us to do that. I think that's definitely something learned. We either learn it from our parents or we learn it from society or a school or wherever, because people aren't born beating themselves up, and criticizing and bullying ourselves. And it's actually drives me crazy. I'm working on it this week. It's like, because I wrote about it yesterday on my Instagram. I was essentially talking about fear, and I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of women Monday night, and fear kept showing up for a lot of people. Fear of rejection and fear of aging and fear of not being a good parent and fear of all this stuff, right? And it made me realize that, we do beat ourselves up, and we do have a choice. So the negative comes in, right? That one negative thought, like I'm not enough, or I should have done this, or I always do that, like why, blah, blah, blah. But we have a choice on the second thought. So we can either take that second thought and add to that negative, or we can make that second thought, which now we're aware of, and flip it and say no, and change it, right? And make it a positive, and then make the third thought a positive. So, and then that becomes a mental practice as opposed to like going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's a really a great tool that I think if no one teaches you that, or you don't see an example of that kind of healthy thinking in your day-to-day life, I mean, you just don't have that tool in your toolbox. It's not all common sense. Sometimes we do get in a habit of negative stuff.
It literally is a tool. You're so right. It is a tool.
Yeah. The more tools we have in our toolbox, the better we're going to be.
In our pink toolbox.
Yes, absolutely. So I know a little bit about your background. I know you've been in the public life for a long time. And do you think that's kind of brought you to where you are and your ability to, I don't think I could speak on a panel like that. I would probably freeze up and freak out, but I mean, you're obviously very experienced, that you've been doing that forever, but how do you think that has kind of led you to this path?
I was a high school teacher first. I remember taking public speaking in college and thinking I was going to die when I was next, and my heart rate, I literally have never felt my heart like where it was like boom, 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 and so I was really nervous back then, but something clicked in my early 20s, and I just was I entered a pageant and ended up winning this pageant, and was on stage and answered questions and did interviews. And from that moment on, then I started working in TV. Oh, no. Then I was teaching first, then I was in the pageant, and then I got into TV. I don't even think about it. I get a little nervous, when people are listening to you and you're on stage, especially when you're by yourself, but on a panel, I love it. And I think it's because I know the message typically that I'm talking about. Either if I'm emceeing an event, it's going to be a charity event, so it's going to be something fabulous, right? Or if I'm at a women's forum, or if I'm talking about whatever it is, I feel very confident on stage, and I love interacting and interviewing people and talking and being on television. You know, I do 20 hours of live news a week. So every day I'm on live television doing news for 4 hours, and I'm in a studio and I'm talking to thousands of people, but I don't even realize I am doing that because I've just got a camera in front of me, you know? And so it's just something, hey, it's just something I've just been doing and doing and doing. And it doesn't bother me. I enjoy it.
Do you think that that is like something that you just get once you have confidence and you've practiced something and you know you're capable of it? Do you think that, because what I just heard myself do when I said I could never do that, and then I was listening to you and I was thinking that's one of those things I'm working on, right? Self-limiting. Yeah. I think all of us are probably guilty of that, but when you tell yourself you can't do something, then, I mean, if someone is listening to this or watching this, and this is something that they are self-limiting on, but that they would love to be able to do, maybe they have a message that they want to share with the world or a valuable story. What advice would you give? Would you just,
well, first of all, when you said I can never see myself do that, yeah, you of course you could do it. You're running like an online magazine and you do interviews on Zoom. Of course you could do it. Yeah, you might be freaking out at first, but you will have practiced prior to going on stage. You will practice your message and you'll be prepared for that, and you'll get up and practice. So, and then it just gets easier and easier. I've just had years of experience of doing it, right? So if you're just starting out, you know, go easy on yourself. And if you're interested in putting and listen, we all have a message. We all have a story. The more research I'm doing about this book, because what happens when you're starting to write a book is that this is what comes up is, who am I to write a book? Who am I to think that I have something to say to put a message out that someone's going to read? And I felt that. And then the more research I did, I realized that all authors feel that, because especially when it's nonfiction, because they're like, who am I? Who would want to read my book, right? But we all have a story. And those folks who are watching this or reading the article, is that if you have a passion, you have something you want to share, and it keeps tapping at you and keeps, you know, you alive, and keeps saying, hey, hello. That's the universe is telling you that you have a message, and there is someone out there, more than one person, that needs to hear your message. So don't be afraid of it. And, you know, I'm preaching to myself right now as I say this, but don't be afraid of putting yourself out there and sharing wisdom that you have with others who need to hear it.
Yeah, I think I've met so many people in my life, and just sitting down and talking to anyone, literally there's a story there. There's an experience that is a connection, and there's some inspiring message. So, but I think the message that you're talking about, that spreading kindness and being kind to ourselves, is something that is universal, and everyone, I think, strives for that. I hope they do. I hope they do. And it's something we all can do better, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we know when we're not being kind to others or to ourselves, you know, even in the workplace, sometimes it's very difficult, you know, that you're forced to work with people who maybe you don't have the same beliefs with, or they rub you the wrong way in some capacity, or whatever it is. And that's a practice as well, as knowing you're in a space that you have to be in, and to find common things that are in common, that you may have in common with them, as opposed to, I can't take this and I can't stand them. What I do in terms of kindness is flip that and say, what are they going through in their life? Like, what are their vulnerabilities? What are their weaknesses? And why are they angry, or why are they being mean? And just like you in the car, right? And in traffic, that person must be having a bad day, as opposed to taking it personally. Try to come from a kind place and empathize with them. And then it just makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I've had lots of experiences like that, where maybe someone I had to interact with because of a business relationship was rough around the edges, or abrupt, or any of those things. And it's easy to give ourselves permission to not be kind to someone, because we're not perceiving them as being kind to us. So we say, oh, you know, I can be like that back, instead of being the one that shows the kindness, that can sometimes transform the relationship. And even if it doesn't, it was never about them and their behavior, right? It's about you.
Yeah. And they know.
Yeah. It's also a lot harder to be unkind to someone who is consistently kind to you. Not that we do that as a manipulation tactic, but in life in general,
no,
it's
you're right.
hard. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's, and also saying kind things, I think, about other people. There's always the water cooler, when we become adults, but then there's, if we're speaking about the kids, maybe talking to your children about things, is that, when you start feeling like you're around someone who's starting to say negative things about someone, try to step away from that situation. Don't play into that situation and then be like, oh yes, and then what about so and so, and then it just becomes this whole gossip thing. I think my mom and my dad taught me this early on, is that I really try very hard not to talk poorly about people or say negative things. I always try to say positive things. And sometimes my friends get annoyed with me, or like my friends at work will be annoyed. They'll be like, oh, she'll never say, like, they'll say something negative, and then they'll be like, oh, but Lou won't ever say anything negative. I'm like, well, that's not always true, but I really try, very hard to find the positive, to find the silver lining, to find something kind to say. There's always one thing you can say kind about someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to be false with it. You can genuinely,
you can really find it.
You can really find it. Everyone has good qualities. So there is something you can compliment someone on. And I think with gossip, I've seen it a million times. And that to me is the nice and kind, because I know a lot of people who will be nice when you interact with them, but you know that in other circumstances, they may be saying things that are not kind, that are not nice. So gossip is something that is very common, or, I know I'm in a lot of like groups of friends and stuff. And when we get together, it tends to be an impulse to kind of, we're venting. It tends to be an impulse to dump out all your negativity because you've been kind for so long and you just need to get it out. So sometimes it's a complaining dump about our spouses or our kids or our jobs or whatever. And unfortunately, negativity just breeds negativity. And sometimes you do need to vent. When I need to do that, I call my sister, because I know it's not going past her. she's my like play telephone, and it won't leave her telephone line. But I think when we get into that habit, and we have certain friends who kind of encourage that, it's one of those things that if we're going to commit to a practice of kindness, we have to cut out those things. So I know it's, 100%. Even some of the things some of the media that we consume, some of the, reality television shows and things like that are just by their nature not kind. They're not even compassionate to the people that are on them and benefiting from them.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I work in TV, and I obviously I tell negative stories all day, but I always think that's why I can't watch negative things. But like, no reality where people are fighting and screaming and being negative towards one another. And even like some dramatic shows that are getting awards and stuff, if there's any like negativity or fighting I understand some drama, like if it's, war or something, but like when people are specifically fighting or being unkind or malicious with it. The other night I was watching, and I was like, I don't need this energy. Like, why am I watching this? It makes me feel bad. And so I switched it and went to something else, and people are like, oh my God, that show's so good. And I'm like, I know, but it didn't make me feel good.
Yeah, that's very true. And unfortunately, I think there's more of that than there is of the positive stuff.
Yeah. And it's entertaining too, is that I think a lot of people fall down, and a lot of people talk about this, but I stepped away for a minute from Instagram and some of just Instagram primarily, because that's where I play a little bit. But, that's especially with teenage girls too, but all of us, men, women, all ages, if you're on there, I was talking with a girl today about it. Like everyone looks great. Everyone's happy. Everyone's like showing their best and everything, that they're traveling. And so while you're using it as therapy to go through and just kind of numb yourself and like look and you catch yourself going back and back, it's actually can be depressing, because then mentally you're comparing, like, I don't feel well today. I'm feeling insecure, or I'm feeling like I don't fit in my jeans, or like I'm getting older, or whatever your concerns are, right? Then you're comparing yourself to all the people who like are looking perfect on Instagram, and it can become depressing, like to the point where you're just like, you get off and your energy level is so low. And I'm very aware of that. I wasn't for years. Now I've gotten very aware of it, and I'm trying not to get caught up in that rabbit hole, because that is tough, especially with the kids. I worry about the teenagers and the 20-year-olds.
It's really hard. I think if you're the type of person who does struggle with comparison, and they say, comparison is the thief of joy, and I get that completely. If you do struggle with that, social media just might be something that's not for you, because everybody's so well curated, and it's not reality. Unfortunately, that's just not what people share. And the hard things and the struggle, that's when we connect. So that's tough.
You know what's really weird is sometimes I find myself like on an elevator, when we get on an elevator, people used to never talk, but now they don't even look up because everyone's like on the phone, right? I intentionally sometimes try to like not be on my phone in the elevator and like say hi. And I'm sure people think I'm like weird, but I'll be like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, good. And then they'll like go back to their phone. But like it snaps them out of like, we've got to look up, and we've got to look at each other in the eye and like acknowledge one another. I know none of us can touch right now, and it's like really weird, and like, but acknowledging each other and seeing each other and looking up at the sun and the trees. And I walk with my phone, but I don't hold the phone. I put it in like a little fanny, because I always worry that I need the phone there in case there's an emergency. But walking with my dog, I like look up at the trees now, and I look at the sky. I try not to be on the phone or like looking down, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous to walk distracted like that, for sure. I think one of the things that you touched on earlier was really important, because a lot of people might assume that, like you said, when you are a kind person and your general demeanor is kind, that you're, going to be easily steamrolled. And I think that's a difficult place to be, because there are times when you need to give someone a correction or present a boundary to someone that's important to you. But you can do that in a kind, calm manner. And maybe people just haven't seen that actually in real life, like represented, because it's hard. I had to tell someone the other day, I would love to have this conversation with you, but I need you to soften your tone, because they were coming at me with a lot of aggression. And it was, we have a problem, let's solve it. But I need you to, I can't respond to that kind of tone. Yeah. Yeah. I'm very sensitive to that kind of aggression. So thankfully that diffused the situation. I think they were caught off guard by me speaking in that calm, even tone. Sometimes I've found when people are aggressive like that, if you don't raise your tone of voice and you don't become emotional, that it's hard to, yell at someone who's very calm.
Going. Yeah. It's hard to keep the fire going but you set a boundary there, and ultimately you were being kind to both of you guys, because then ultimately it probably got resolved, as opposed to, and you're aware of that, right? But thank goodness you were able to say that, because then again, back to what we were talking, you spoke your truth, right? You're super sensitive to that. You were shutting down.
Yeah, but it's hard. I think it's hard, and it's especially hard for women, because we do get talked over more often, and we do get, I don't want to say bullied, but especially if your tone is calm and you tend to be a kind person, sometimes people can try to take advantage of that, or feel like at least the opportunity is there to take advantage of that. So how do you balance kindness with boundaries, and with still having a powerful role in whatever interaction you're having?
Yeah. I feel like I bring a confidence to the table wherever I am or in a situation. So I have the confidence there in terms of like having the strength, but it is a fine line in terms of, I'm not really good about, it depends on what situation I'm in, but I don't like conflict. So I either shy away from conflict if it's happening, and I won't sometimes speak up and diffuse it like you did, which was awesome that you were able to do that. I would be like, I don't know how to help this person, or like, it's like super awkward, but, it's difficult, it's like, again, it's back to the practice of like, how do I want this situation to be resolved? Or how do I want, in terms of me being in a room, and if someone's bullying me, or not bullying me, but like, for instance, when I was competing at Miss USA, I was Miss South Carolina at the time, and I was with a bunch of the contestants for 2 weeks. We were all together because we had to do filming and rehearsals and a bunch of stuff. And one of the girls, I'm not going to mention which state, but one of the girls, like, we were all together every day, all day. She never, ever, ever acknowledged me the entire 2 weeks. Like, if I walked by her in the aisle on the bus, I'd say hi to different girls or whatever. I did not exist to her. And I was young. I was only 24 and a half at the time, almost 25. And I was like, what have I done wrong? Like, I kept thinking, what am I doing wrong? Right. But I realized that was a manipulation on her part. That was her being unkind, right? That was her being, if I can just ignore her, then it'll either, I guess, mess with my self-confidence, or I'm not sure what she was trying to do. But it was a lesson for me to realize that, like, I can continue to be kind, even if I'm being treated unkind and being manipulated in a way. And just like my mom used to say, and there's sayings out there, like, kill them with kindness, right? I mean, that seems a little aggressive, but, but you just stay in your space, stay in your kindness zone, and stay in it, even though it's like when you're in meditation and all the thoughts keep coming and going, and you're like, oh, I want to stay on that thought. I want to stay on that thought. Stay in the zone, right? Stay in the kindness zone as much as you can. And like, just realize that everyone else is spinning and doing their stuff. And if you are drawn to that energy, you're going to get off track and then probably become unkind, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when it becomes a weakness.
Yeah. And I think if we're being kind in order to generate a response from someone, if we're being kind in order to be liked, or we're being kind because that person is ignoring us and we want them to notice us, be our friend, because we all crave being liked. I mean, that's a natural thing. But if we're being kind with any agenda behind it, other than the agenda of just being kind, we need to examine our motives and recenter our commitment to just kindness for the sake of kindness.
Yeah, I remember also too, when I first worked in a newsroom, my first newsroom, it was a very small newsroom at the CBS affiliate in South Carolina. I love quotes, and we had these little mailboxes, and again, I came in as, a former Miss USA, as a new reporter. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and not everybody was nice. And I was like, the first time in my life, I'm like, wow, not everyone's being nice. And I had to say, am I doing something wrong? But it wasn't. It was just, they were bullying me. But I pushed through that. And I remember I had this really cool quote. It was like, it wasn't footprints. It wasn't like a religious thing, but it was something about like, if I had the chance to do it all over again, my life, I would blah, blah, blah. And it was like this really beautiful poem that I had found that this 99-year-old woman wrote. And I wanted to share it with people. So I made copies of it. I didn't put my name on it. And I just put it in everyone's mailbox. It's just what I do. Like, I just love doing stuff like that. And as a former teacher, and I remember one of the guys like pulled it. He was like, who put this stupid poem in the mailbox? And I was like, oh, I remember dying. And he was like, who would put this stupid, like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, and I remember thinking, oh my, like, why would someone react like that? Like, and so part of me again was like, okay, I need to back off. Like, I don't need to be doing, and I wasn't doing it to get reaction. I didn't even put my name on it. It was an anonymous thing. Right. But I remember thinking, have I done something wrong? But I had not done anything wrong. All I was doing was trying to spread love and kindness. And because I think I felt like this bad energy in the newsroom, and I was trying to like kumbaya and have everyone happy. But I stayed in my zone, right? I stayed in my zone, and those negative people ended up either getting fired or moved on. And then eventually I got a different job. And, and I think ultimately I could have given up on kindness then too, right? I could have said, oh, maybe I should just pull back and not be that person. I wasn't as aware about it then. Later in life, when things happen, that's when I wanted to give up on kindness. I was like, okay, I'm way too naive. I'm like, stop it already, right? But it's my core, and I don't want to give up on it. I want to be doing kind things the day I die.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. That really resonates with me, because I think the world just tries to kind of leech the kindness out of it. That's why we have to practice it every day, because it's harder and harder to maintain when, people actively push against it. It's sad, but it's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not realize that you were from South Carolina. That's amazing. My mother's whole side of that family is in the Carolinas, both north and south. Yes.
Awesome.
She lives in Charlotte, and I have family in Raleigh and Troy. And I have a daughter and a niece, both living in Savannah right now in Georgia.
Awesome. Oh, that's beautiful. I grew up about 20 miles from Savannah, so I know it very well.
Oh yeah. We have a place in Sea Island, so we go back and forth quite a bit. But my daughter and my niece are both at Savannah College of Art and Design right now. So yes. So I'm an honorary Southern Belle. I don't think I grew up in California, but I have a lot of Southern roots.
just throw a couple y'alls out there and then you'll be fine.
Yes, that works. I can make good cornbread and biscuits, so I feel like I get the honorary Southern Belle.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. If you can do biscuits, you're good.
I can. So, I mean, I love your message. I love everything that you're doing. It really speaks to me and speaks to who I am. But I'm sure a lot of our readers and listeners, it will also resonate, because this is such an important message in the world that we're living in today. It's getting more and more important, especially with everything we've gone through in the last 2 years, the isolation and the loneliness and the lack of connection. I mean, it's even more important probably than ever, not to mention all the lives that have been lost. I mean, everyone's going through something right now. So how can our audience and our readership get involved with Be Kind & Co? What would you recommend they do?
Well, first of all, we've got the site bekindandco.com, so they can go on there, and we don't have as many articles as we used to, but when we do have them, I think they're really powerful and strong. And we also have, I launched a merchandise line, a t-shirt and hoodie line about 6 months ago. So it's all like be a kind human, and kindness wins, and just anything that, and it's for LGBT, it's for women, and for unisex, for men and women. So, and Born Kind, all kinds of cool merchandise. But then my messaging is on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, I'm Lou Parker LA, and I do a lot of messaging there, I think. And then obviously Be Kind & Co is on Instagram. And then I think I would love for them to be a part of the newsletter and just kind of follow like what's happening with me and with Be Kind & Co and what we're up to, especially when the events happen. I'd love for them to participate. And, just I think the best way to participate is to be kind, and to hashtag, kindness wins, and whatever. Just even if you're doing your own post, just do a hashtag around kindness. I think it's really important, and just like a little note to people to remind them to be kind.
Yeah, that is so important. So I think that's great. People can follow on the Instagram and see when the events are going to come back up. And honestly, I mean, if you are a social media person, we touched on it during this talk, but it can really, who you follow and who, shows up on your feed or your For You page or whatever, really makes a difference on how, your experience with social media goes. So follow as many positive accounts as possible. You'll find great affirmations. You'll just lots of tips and reminders every day to do great things, to be kind. So I think that's great. Everyone should definitely follow those accounts, and hopefully you'll be able to do some live events soon, because that would be so fun. I would love to be able to actually meet you in person.
I mean, let's hope maybe like the middle or in the fall or something. I think it would be fantastic. And I appreciate you reaching out. It's always great to have a really good conversation and just, feel good about like what we're doing, and also remind ourselves of like why we do what we do, right? And a lot of people who are watching or, a part of this or reading the article is that there's so many, there's a message that you can put out in the world, and whatever that message is, just try to find a space for it. Someone's listening, you're influencing, inspiring someone you may not even know is looking or listening.
Yeah. I mean, we may have, someone may be listening to this or reading the article or watching this on YouTube who had a really rough day today, and they're having trouble reminding themselves to be kind to someone in their life, or to themselves. Even more importantly, maybe they're just in a bad place. I mean, we all go to the zoo once in a while, so I like to put it.
Yes, we do.
So this is your reminder to do something kind for yourself today. And if you have the energy to do something kind for someone else, just do that, because it pays amazing dividends for the world at large, like you said, the universe.
Yeah, one of my friends has it in a site too, and it's just, she always reminds people that you are enough, and that's what I do when I do the affirmations for people in the group. We do a blank, and then whatever it is, I am blank, and I am enough is mine, because I always feel that I'm not enough, and I think that's very similar for a lot of people out there. But fill in that blank for yourself. I am blank, and whatever word pops up, just keep reminding yourself of that.
Yeah, that's so important. And you're right. It does feel silly sometimes to do those affirmations, but your body is like subconsciously hearing that and internalizing it. I think, at least, maybe
it 100% hears it. It hears the negative too.
Yeah. I mean, affirmations were strange for me when I started doing them. I had to do what I call affirmations, where I had to say, like, what if I'm enough? And then and let myself kind of explore that. What if I'm, whatever the affirmation is, because it was hard for me to authentically say those things to myself in the beginning. I struggled. So now I've did the what ifs, and now I did the affirmations, and now I'm onto the affirmations, and I'm loving it. So
the what if is kind of interesting too, because that's a question, right? As opposed to the statement. So that can bring up other stuff. That's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. And it did bring up other stuff. I mean, I realized I was doing that self-limiting behavior. I was upper limiting myself, is how I put it. I was upper limiting myself. So I was putting a ceiling on things because I didn't think maybe I was as capable as I thought I should be, or I was experienced enough, or I was, you know how it goes, all the things.
Well, you'll have to be on the panel, since you said that you would never be able to do it. You're going to have to be on one of the panels.
Okay, I will start building my confidence level up
as a female entrepreneur.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet you. I really appreciate your time and sharing your message with all of our readers. And I just think what you're doing is great. So
thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it too.
All right.
And we'll be in touch.